Guess who's back?
Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to get into our AFC South preview, but before we do, please like the video, subscribe to the channel to get notifications whenever we post a new video. We are going to continue division by division leading into training camp. Like I said, this week we have the AFC South, so let's get started. First, we are going to start with the Jaguars. I think the most notable thing, or one of the first things that was notable to me about the Jags change from last year to this year was before the last two games of the season, they fired Tom Coughlin as the executive vice president of the team. Basically, he was like the de facto GM type. I mean, he had decision-making power in almost anything that went on with the roster, day-to-day, almost like another head coach because of his experience previously with the Jaguars and the Giants. And he ruffled a lot of feathers, I would say, with the players.
Definitely he's not the type of older guy that doesn't suit well with the younger type of players, and yeah.
Starting off in 2017, whenever they had a high draft pick, taking Leonard Fournette so high in that draft class was kind of questionable for people, but it was all Tom Coughlin's desire to become a ground and pound, run the ball team, almost like a Jason Garrett-esque statement that they made. And Fournette was the best running back in that class, and I believe he is still a good runner. But I mean, looking back on it now, could they have, probably taken a better player? Yes, possibly. Could they have taken a quarterback in that point? A better defensive piece? Yes. But even if they did, was the case, like they took Jalen Ramsey in 2016, another player that was a quality pick and, was an all-pro type player. He was a guy that didn't get along with Coughlin, and Coughlin ended up trading him because of that. And I think that was another one of the death nails in his coffin of leaving the Jags. And then another thing was there was a grievance by players, including Leonard Fournette and Dante Fowler, of medical grievances against Tom Coughlin that they ended up winning, that they would be fined for rehab sessions that they were taking whenever they wouldn't attend the team rehab sessions. They would go and do them on their own, and Coughlin would fine players, and they won that. So I think once that verdict came down from the NFLPA and the arbitrator in that case, Shad Khan, the owner of the Jags, decided, it was time to part ways, even though it was early in the season. And it gave him a little extra opportunity to evaluate the head coach and the GM at the end of the season without the overseeing of Tom Coughlin, because he was kind of like that. He had his hands all over the team, really.
Can't micromanage everything.
Yeah. So next up was Doug Marrone, where the rumors were they were going to fire him as well at the end of the season, and surprisingly they didn't. He's still with the team going into 2020. My guess is that this is going to be his make or break it. I mean, there's going to be a microscope on him the entire season. And this year is kind of an interesting year for them because all the moves they made in this offseason and then going into the draft were all like a reload, a rebuild. It's pretty clear that that's what this team is going forward with, because, in years past, they were this dominant defense. I mean, they made it all the way to the AFC Championship with Blake Bortles at quarterback. And after that year, whenever it came time to decide how to go forward with a team like that, they decided another death knell, I guess, in Tom Coughlin's. They decided to double down on Blake Bortles, and we all know how that turned out. But anyway, all that talent of that team, of those teams, that great defense and team that they had, like Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey,
Telvin Smith is no longer there.
Smith, who retired.
The defense was fast.
AJ Boye. I mean, they had talent all over. I mean, all those guys are gone. They're no longer with the team. And then the biggest story that's still yet to close is Yannick Ngakoue, another great piece of their defense to pass rusher. They franchise tagged him. He's disappointed. He's gotten into social media bouts with the son of Shad Khan. He does not want to be with the team either. I mean, when I say ruffled feathers, I mean it's to the point where these guys really, really do not want to play with the Jaguars anymore. So we'll see what happens with him. He's searching for a DeMarcus Lawrence-esque money, so that would be in excess of $23.5 million per year. I don't know if anyone's willing to pay that. There was no draft day trade, as some kind of predicted. So going into 2020, it's either sign the tag or sit out a year and make nothing. So that'll be an interesting thing to monitor for the remainder of the offseason going into the season.
And at the beginning of this past season, we all know the big story was coming in was Nick Foles being the quarterback. I remember watching the first Kansas City game. Fortunately, he ended up getting hurt that game. I can't remember exactly who he got rocked by, but man, I think he threw a touchdown on the play though.
He did,
that was a really nice deep ball. And then Gardner Minshew stepped in, and I felt like at times he showed really great flashes. He was one of the highest graded deep ball throwers in this past season, and I feel like things look good for Gardner if coming into this next season. And one thing to note about that is the Jaguars did a really good job of getting rid of that Foles contract and trading it to the Bears. So that was able, when you have players that you've lost like Campbell, Ramsey, Smith, and Ngakoue wanting to leave and having to rebuild, it's really important that also you don't not only capitalize on your draft capital, but you're able to do stuff in the salary cap wise. And that was something that I felt was really going to hinder them if you're going to end up starting rolling with Gardner and having Foles there. And you don't want to be paying a really lucrative. You want to be paying two quarterbacks. You want to be paying your one quarterback.
Yeah, and that is the added benefit of getting rid of all these star players. I mean, there's a lot of contracts off the books for them, and really, this is going to be an audition also for Gardner Minshew this year, because he did have some great highlights this season, and he had some lowlights. I mean, he was up and down, but can you really blame a rookie quarterback? But there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. He is a cheap alternative right now, but the Jaguars going into the future have a lot of draft capital. They had a lot of draft capital this year, but they do also in future years as well from these, like a Jalen Ramsey trade that they pulled off. So quarterback could still be in their targets, especially going into next year where everyone has expectations that it's going to be a pretty damn good class. But let's start off with the free agent ads. They were pretty quiet as far as big names. With losing some of that salary cap, they also didn't spend very much, so they're trying to be frugal, I guess you could say. Their biggest signature was Joe Schobert, the former linebacker of the Cleveland Browns. He was kind of an all-around linebacker for them. 5-year, $53.75 million deal. Darqueze Dennard also signed a deal with them, a 3-year, $13.5 million per year contract.
That's a good value contract.
But I think, like RJ already kind of said, their biggest moves in free agency were the players that they were shipping off, which were Calais Campbell for a 5th-round pick, and then A.J. Boye for a 4th-round pick to the Broncos, Nick Foles to the Bears for a 4th-round pick. I mean, these were key members of the team in the past, and it's time for a different look for the Jaguars.
I would actually go as far as saying the only move that I obviously don't like as far as the shipping off of the players is the Ramsey move, but he didn't want to be there. But as far as the Campbell, he's getting older, he has a really heavy contract. It's a time for rebuild, so that's fine. Boye really, he's not in his.
He had a decline this
past year, and oh my gosh, who was the other player? Oh, and Foles, obviously Foles, and that's fine. So the only one really that I'm really not wouldn't have liked to lose obviously is Ramsey.
But I mean, in that trade, they did get some supreme value, 2 first-round picks from the Rams. I mean, that was a trend-setting deal. Going into the draft, they had 2 first-round picks, and you could almost kind of see where they were going to go. Some people maybe thought receiver in the first round, and then maybe quarterback. But on the defensive side, with the pieces, these players, veterans that we already mentioned, defense was going to be a big focus, and that's what they ended up doing with the number 9 overall pick. They took the second-best corner in the draft, C.J. Henderson. They followed that up at pick 20 with Caleb Jason, the second-best pass rusher in this draft class. No receiver in the first round, but then luckily in the second round, a top possibly 5 talent at receiver falls to them, and Laviska Shenault, he did have core injury surgery, which was probably what pushed him down a little bit. He didn't get to perform any workouts, obviously, with the pandemic, and then with that injury. But I think that was a pretty good value for them.
Yeah, but as far as him coming out of college, he was one of the top receivers that I heard being talked about, and I think if he would have been able to do everything work out, I think he would have measured great. I definitely would have gone in the first round.
And he's a different type of receiver than something that they have right now. He's more of a yak guy. DJ Chark is just that vertical deep threat. And then they have a host of other receivers that can be, spot players for them. Chenault's a good number 2 addition for Gardner Minshew going into 2020. Devon Hamilton, the defensive tackle from Ohio State, I like that pick. Later on, they also picked Colin Johnson, the wide receiver from Texas. Keep an eye on him. Maybe he'll be able to pop off. He had some pretty good games for the Longhorns this past year, watching him. But overall, I mean, their first 2 picks were great. Their first 3 picks were great. And they filled pretty much the needs that they really needed on this team. The Jags, going into 2020, expectations, I don't think they're a playoff team.
No, I don't think they're a playoff team.
And I think that Doug Marrone will be fired at the end of this year. Really, I just look at this season as the audition for Gardner Minshew. That's all it.
Yeah.
That's all it is, really. To pay attention to Minshew. How does the offense perform? How does he perform? And is this going to be the guy that you want to roll with into the future? Because if not, I mean, there's going to be like guys like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields that may be available for you if you're that bad this season. Though there will be a lot of teams eyeing those guys.
I feel like though they won't be that bad, but I feel like they'll compete, but they won't be a playoff team. So maybe like 7-9, 6-10, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean they are reloading. So if you do see some shine from Gardner Minshew, I mean it's always good to find a quarterback in what was it, the 5th round?
Yeah,
something like so. They win in the end on that. So let's get into the next team, the Indianapolis Colts. I think starting off, the big thing for them was signing Phillip Rivers to a 1-year deal, and I think he's already basically said that it's going to be 1 year. It's not going to be another, because he's already committed to being a head coach of a high school the following in 2021. So it looks like this is going to be a one-and-done deal for Phillip Rivers. I guess an all-in attempt to make the playoffs and make a run at the Super Bowl. RJ, you've always been a big Phillip Rivers fan. What are your thoughts on Rivers at this stage in his career? Because he had some highs, but here recently.
Yeah, man, he's really. I always want to be the guy to stick up for Rivers and stuff, just because throughout his career and how tough he's been, and man, when he's on fire, he's on fire. He's tough to stop. He'll pick you apart any day. But yeah, through last season, I just felt like it's kind of like seeing I felt like he was turning into Ben when you really start seeing some of the games that Ben had started having towards when we saw him, the 5 interception game and stuff, and just countless like mistakes and like, what are you doing? But I also feel like if you could have picked a perfect team and a perfect situation for him with the offensive line they have, and now with the draft, which we'll address, I'll touch on a bit, them drafting Jonathan Taylor and picking a nice wide receiver to complement, and they shored up the defense a little bit. I mean, they have I felt like this was a good situation for Rivers. This is a good situation for Rivers, and I wouldn't be surprised if he rejuvenates his career a little bit in this last season that he's going to have, and I think he'll have a good year.
Yeah, I think Rivers. He's always been a risk taker. Maybe it is his body failing him already at this point, because some of those risks that he's taken this past season were just they didn't turn up on the good end for the Chargers. And the Chargers have always been, that team that just they can't get over that hump.
The Chargers did have a bit of a curse, so they always had injuries and their offensive line was never
really good. And going into the offensive line, Anthony Costanzo, they were able to re-sign him. He was considering retirement, but I think the signing of Rivers, a little bit more assurance that this team was going to try and be competitive this year, brought him back to one of the best offensive lines in football. The other big deal that they did, they had the 13th overall pick in the draft. They traded that for the 49ers defensive tackle to Forrest Buckner and signed him to a monster contract, so he'll be playing the 3 technique in their defense. But But yeah, I mean, those were the big offseason moves for them. Going into the draft, I mean, they didn't have a first-round pick, obviously, after trading it, but they were able to get really, really great value in the second round, starting off with Michael Pittman Jr. from USC.
He's one of our favorite players, yeah.
A perfect complement to T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's that speed guy on the other side, who great route runner. Michael Pittman's just going to be that straight line speed guy, possibly jump ball go getter for Phillip Rivers. And Phillip Rivers likes to spread the ball around, and a young guy like him is going to really thrive with a veteran quarterback like Rivers. And then able to get Jonathan Taylor later in the second round, running back from Wisconsin.
Huge.
I mean, they already had a pretty good running game with Marlon Mack, but infusing some youth into that backfield, because behind Marlon Mack, they had a host of other guys that never really popped for them, but had to come in at certain times, and they had to depend on. So now having a quality player like Jonathan Taylor right behind them is great for the team. Another interesting pick in the fourth round, they take Jacob Eason, the quarterback from Washington, who was a highly recruited guy coming out of high school, went to Georgia, had that injury after a pretty good start that season, and then had a decent season for Washington this year. Behind the top quarterbacks in this class, there was a group of about three that their grading was all over the place. Eason was high on some people's boards, lower on others. So we'll see what happens with him. Is he developmental for a developmental guy to take over after Rivers retires? We'll see. But I mean, it's going to be a competition because they still do have Jacoby Brissett as well, who started for them last year. Brissett had some monster games last year, but they just could never really get it all together. And I think that's what drove them to pull the trigger on Rivers. I jokingly said, I think everyone would love if, Andrew Luck surprisingly came out of retirement, because this is as good of a team that they've had since he was with the Colts. But going later into the draft, they hit a lot of different positions: defensive tackle, a couple offensive linemen, Julian Blackmon, the safety, in the third round from Utah. I like that pick. But overall, this team is trying to reload after a down season, trying to survive without Andrew Luck. Will Phillip Rivers be the guy that puts them over the hump and gets them back to the playoffs?
Huge, yeah.
I see this team as like a 10-6 team.
Yeah.
I think they could have a record like that. I don't think they're going to be supreme world beaters or anything, but they have good defensive pieces on the other side. They definitely have enough on offense.
What they just need to do is be consistent and efficient, because they have the pieces along their roster to be a good solid team and to be able to compete against the other guys in their division. And
Frank Reich is a really good head coach. Last year they were one of the better rushing teams, and like we said, they have a great offensive line, but I wouldn't call the talent at running back, I wouldn't call Marlon Mack a supreme talent.
No.
It was more scheme. It was the guys blocking for him. They've infused more talent on this team, and like we said, the Chargers curse. There's just something about the Chargers that we'll find out this year. Is it a Phillip Rivers thing or is it a Chargers thing? So, and hopefully, it wasn't a body decline by Rivers last year, and he'll be able to.
Yeah, that's one thing that I saw that I felt like I was kind of starting to see that I was maybe worried about, but we'll see. Maybe playing indoors now too, so. So that's a big up for him. I think the first time he's done that in his career.
All right, moving forward, the Titans, another team that made some surprising moves with veterans, big names that were cut by the Titans in the offseason: Delaney Walker, Dion Lewis, Ryan Suckup, Cameron Wake. Some pretty big names that contributed to this team in the past. Wake was a recent addition, but he didn't really pan out this past year for the Titans. And then the other big one was trading Jarrell Casey for a 7th round pick to the Broncos, and he even made a statement, I believe it was last week, saying that he felt like he was thrown out like a piece of string. If Jarrell Casey was that guy, whenever this Titans team sucked, he was that bright spot on the defensive line, a leader on the defense. So that was very surprising for me, but I think that it is it's a product of the Titans moving towards a multiple defense, and getting moving more toward athletic pass rushers versus Casey. He's a great player at what he does. A wonderful defensive end in a 3-4 scheme. But with the multiple front, with a guy like Harold Landry, they brought in Vic Beasley.
Their interior linebackers are able to blitz and stuff. I think. And in the Ravens game, they really who was the guy in the Ravens game that really took care of
It was Correa. I believe that's what his name was. He filled in for I believe it was Wake whenever Wake was injured. And he had a really good game. And they re-signed him actually too. So just like that Patriots coaching tree with guys like Brian Flores and Matt Patricia. Mike Vrabel is also the guy who's looking for multiple things in his defense. So also getting rid of a high contract like Jarrell Casey helps them in the long run because they had some big deals to get done starting off with the quarterback. They re-signed Ryan Tannehill, who of course filled in for Marcus Mariota after it was kind of time to look in a different direction. And Tannehill took this team all the way to the AFC Championship. Nobody could have seen that. Nobody predicted it. It was just a magical run.
Guys, really. Some people will knock Tannehill and they'll have an argument with Derrick Henry and Tannehill who was more important. But guys, this team wasn't playing that good even when Mariota was a quarterback. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about your quarterback. And Tannehill was just efficient. He didn't turn the ball over. He made some really good plays. I mean, hell, he made some really good throws too, especially in that playoff game. I really wasn't surprised because I felt like throughout his career in Miami, he really showed that potential. I think his coordinator and stuff was trash and Gase. But yeah, I wasn't surprised when Tannehill was able to step in and play that efficiently, and that's what you really need from him with a defense that was good last year and a running game that was good. But at the end of the day, Tannehill was able to help that team take the next step. So I'll go ahead and get into the Derrick Henry situation. They did what was right. They did what was right. You don't pay him.
They learn from the mistakes of their colleagues, I guess you could say. Of course, Henry's looking for top of the market money, like a Zeke contract, a Christian McCaffrey contract, but
no.
Running back is that position. Whenever they touch the ball, they're going to get hit. They get hit constantly. Their bodies wear down. It's sad to say, but if you have a great running back on a rookie contract, kind of like the Cowboys did with DeMarco Murray, and they made the right move, and it pissed us off back then a little bit, but I think they were ahead of their time, and then they went back on that with Zeke, is you use the running back as much as you can, and if they want to break the bank, then you move on and you get younger talent, because whenever you have a good offensive line, a good scheme like the Titans had last year, sometimes you can just put another game. And that's nothing against Derrick Henry, but be able to replicate what he did in 2019 for 2020, it's more of a product of volume. And then also, there's just some things that you can't replicate from year to year. The incredible big plays, the 99-yard touchdown run against the Jaguars on Thursday Night Football, things like that. Actually, that was 2 years ago, but you can't replicate a lot of those big play type things from year to year. And at Derrick Henry, I mean, this was almost like his breakout. It took the final year of his contract for him to really, really break out. And then some would say it took the final year of his contract for the Titans to really give him the ball. Yes, I would agree with that too. But, I mean, it's just not... The game is going to where running back is not going to be a priority anymore, I don't think, very much for these teams. But we will see what the trend is. It's a team-to-team thing, obviously, because the Panthers signed Christian McCaffrey to that monster contract. But getting back to Tannehill a little bit, what they signed him to, 4-year, $118 million deal. That roughly comes out to $22.5 million. I mean, my history with Tannehill, I'll get into that at the end of whenever we're talking about the Titans, but at 22.5, whenever the top-end tier guys are, like Dak's going to probably get $35 million per year, I think that's a great deal.
Yeah, that's a good contract.
For a guy who got you to the AFC Championship last year. We'll see what happens this year. But, I mean, to have a top 15 type, top 20 type quarterback for that much money. Gives you some cap space flexibility, and then if they really do want to get out of the contract, the way they wrote it up, the dead cap hits in 2022 are only $10 million and $5 million in 2023. So they have escape hatches if it really goes to shit, really. Another big deal, they lose Jack Conklin in free agency, their premier right tackle. He did deal with some injuries this past year, but they re-signed Dennis Kelly. He filled in admirably for them this past year. Obviously, they made it pretty far, and he'll be playing right tackle for them this year. One last bit about the Titans. As far as free agent and things go, they've been linked to Jadeveon Clowney, along with Seattle and the Browns. Whenever this thing first kicked off, that you knew Clowney was up in the air. So, I think it was even all the way up until yesterday, there were comments being made by Titans ownership saying that they think he would be a good fit on their team. And they made a pretty good run. And we'll see what happens. I think Clowney is one of the, like I've said before, one of those players where I don't think he wants to go through a traditional camp. He's going to wait it out to the very end, almost like Brett Favre used to do back in the day, and pick his team towards the very end. It could be the Titans.
I feel like too, at multiple D. That's going to be the best type of defense for him in his career now that he's done with his first contract.
And they'd immediately have like a deep pass rushing rotation adding him. They already signed Vic Beasley, as you said before Correa, Harold Landry, and now they're going to add Jadeveon Clowney. So if they are able to add him, I think that would be a great addition to this defense. Going into the draft, they didn't have very many picks. They had a first, second, third, fifth, and 2 7s. So not much premier picks. But with the first 3 starting off at pick 29, they take Isaiah Wilson, offensive tackle, Georgia. This is a guy who had a late jump in the draft where he started rising up boards. A great tackle for Georgia. And then with the loss of Conklin, I think that was an immediate need for them. They could have really gone all over the place. Corner was a need. But whenever you get offensive tackle talent all the way down at 29, I don't think you could pass it up. No. So I thought that was a value pick. It wasn't the sexiest pick, especially with some of the players that were going before them and after them, but I think it was a value for them. And then another great value in the second round, all the way down at pick 61, Christian Fulton, the cornerback from LSU, who many had as a first-round talent. A lot of people were able to cash in on the value at cornerback, including teams like the Cowboys and others, the Bears, of guys sliding down in the second. I thought that was a great pick for them, especially because they didn't re-sign Logan Ryan. He's no longer with the team. So you get to infuse new cornerback talent onto this Titans team. Third round, Darrington Evans, running back from App State. This was another guy that was under the radar, but can provide some serious juice to the team in complement to Derrick Henry this year. Dion Lewis, he didn't really work out with the Titans. He was supposed to be that receiving complement to Derrick Henry, but just never really got it working with them after some great years with the Patriots. And that's kind of the trend we see really with these guys who go from Patriots to another team and then they make it back to the Patriots and they do it all over again. But anyway, so overall, I think they solidified themselves in some key spots and they brought back the guys that they need to. Now it's all a question, is Tannehill going to be able to bring it back all over again this year? Is Derrick Henry going to be able to replicate what he did last year? Is this offense going to be able to click and drive all over again like they did last year?
I will say this is the best coach team in the division. I think they have the upper hand on the other teams like that, and we'll touch on the Texans here, but I really don't care for Bill O'Brien.
I like Frank Reich, I think, a little bit better than Mike Vrabel as a head coach, but I could see the argument. Going to Tannehill, me personally, all the way back whenever he was drafted by the Dolphins, I thought it was a weird pick. The guy was a converted wide receiver to quarterback. I believe he only started 2 years for Texas A&M, and he showed flashes, but it wasn't anything that I thought was first round worthy. And then in his career with the Dolphins, he showed a lot of highlights, and then he had the lowlights, and then he would get injured, and he never really put it all together. And I think, this was just a situation with the Titans where he just had to do just enough, and it got them to the point, where they were with some great coaching and a good defense, and some good offensive skill positions where they were able to get to the point that they did in 2019. Are they going to be able to do it again in 2020? On one hand, Tannehill would have gotten a full offseason of work with the offensive skill positions. How much that's actually going to get done with everything that's going on right now, I don't know. I don't know how much of that is actually going to happen. But on one hand, you would say, okay, he's going to have more time with this team. They're going to be able to gel even better than they were last year. On the other hand, are they going to be able to do it all over again? Tannehill, you could say it was a fluke. Has he ever done anything like this previous in his career? Have the Titans made that far of a run in previous years with similar talent? I don't know. It's an interesting. I'm not even going to pick a record for this team. They're a mystery to me, really.
One thing I would like to see, though, is more involvement of Corey Davis, their top pick a couple of years ago that was selected. I want to say number 4.
Yeah, he was a guy that right now, he hasn't performed definitely up to first round status.
But they got A.J. Brown. Man, oh my gosh, he was wonderful for them last year. Had one of the best rookie seasons of a receiver in this past couple 5 years, 6 years for the past guys. Really, a lot of the receivers had really good seasons. Some of the best seasons we've seen since that Odell class. But yeah, that's a bright spot though. A.J. Brown coming into the second year, and hopefully the more involvement with Corey Davis, because he is really talented though.
So the Titans, a mystery, but going into the Texans, there's a lot more clarity. Bill O'Brien, he is the head coach, he is the GM. That was reconfirmed by the Texans at the close of the season after that embarrassing loss to the Chiefs whenever they went up 24-0 in Kansas City, and then proceeded to blow it. The Chiefs came all the way back and basically doubled up the score. I believe they scored 28 unanswered points, something like that, and blew out the Texans and moved on and eventually won the Super Bowl. But the Texans organization doubled down on Bill O'Brien, and he doubled down on whatever his thought process is. Let's just go into the big one. Trading DeAndre Hopkins to the Cardinals. They send Hopkins and a 4th-round pick to Arizona for David Johnson and a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick. Also in that trade, they take on David Johnson's contract, the big one that the Cardinals gave him a few years back. David Johnson, who had I'm a David Johnson fan, but he had a horrible season last year. He didn't look anything like the David Johnson. You could say that maybe he just wasn't a fit for the Cliff Kingsbury offense. A lot of lateral running. I don't think that was his strong suit, especially after injuries. So we'll see what happens with the Texans. But as we said, the trend of running back, where you're paying these guys how much you're paying them, and a guy who had a decline last year, and then trading the type of player that DeAndre Hopkins is, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the NFL. I don't know what the heck was going on. The report was that Hopkins was going to want a new deal. And he's, in my opinion, underpaid. And it sounded like he wasn't going to try and break the bank. He just wanted to be fairly compensated. But there was something with Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins that was never going to be reconciled. And Bill O'Brien agreed with that, and he sent him off. And I'm sure that didn't make Deshaun Watson too happy. They had a great connection, those two. Yeah. Both of them attended Clemson, so they had that connection. Both of them, had career years together with throwing and receiving the ball with each other. So I don't know, man. I'm never going to understand this one. Yeah,
I'll never understand it. The way we've talked about running backs here on this channel, and this is something that obviously I think David, maybe when he was good, he was really good. Right?
Yeah, one of the best.
Yeah, one of the best. The thing about David, though, also, he's a great receiving back.
Mm-hmm.
So that that can help you there. I feel like if you really need to get the most out of this trade, you're not going to get close. Anyways, I'm not even going to touch on that. But as far as you need to use David Johnson in every single way possible that you can to really try to even closely justify the thought process behind this.
So, yeah, I mean, getting rid of Hopkins, I don't think there's much more we can say on this. I mean, it's honestly probably the biggest offseason story in the NFL. So, moving forward, as far as what it says for this team and Watson, I'll hit on what my thoughts are at the end of their little segment. But some of the additions that they made, another interesting was trading for Brandon Cooks, sending a pick to the Rams, and then also again taking on a big contract. They were basically replaced Hopkins' contract for Brandon Cooks' contract. If you look at it from that standpoint, again, what the hell? Brandon Cooks, I think for the last 2-3 seasons, has had some kind of injury that has taken him out of games. He's pretty much just a home run threat, or it was with the Rams. So we'll see what Bill O'Brien does with him this year. Randall Cobb from the Texans, from the Cowboys, slot receiver. They signed him almost immediately after trading DeAndre Hopkins. Had a good year with the Cowboys, had some critical drops, but I guess they're trying to replace by numbers here, really, is what Bill O'Brien is trying to do.
But I also feel like Cobb is a guy that really capitalized on, having some down years, being injured, had that good year with Dallas, but still, if I'm a Texans fan, I don't feel... No, you don't.
Nothing's ever gonna.
You don't feel good about this, and they're trying to, I guess, really wide receiver by committee or by numbers, and I don't think that's gonna, at the end of the day, really go into it. I don't think these guys are going to be the reliable guys and the guys that are going to take you over the top and what you need to compete in the AFC when you have teams like the Ravens and the Chiefs. The question marks around these guys are not what you want when you're having to compete with teams like that.
Another I guess notable addition that they made in free agency, Timmy Jernigan, the defensive tackle. Now, getting into the players that they lost, of course, DeAndre Hopkins, Carlos Hyde, who had some good games for them. He was critical in their win over the Chiefs earlier in the regular season. DJ Reader, the defensive tackle, who was a really great player for them. Lamar Miller, of course, he had a terrible injury in the preseason last year. And then Jonathan Joseph, a veteran that was with the team for forever. Getting into the draft, with all these trades that they had, or they kind of, I guess, executed, they also traded for Laramie Tunsil at the start of the 2019 season, so they didn't have a first-round pick. So starting in the second-round, pick 40, they took defensive tackle Ross Blacklock from TCU. I like this pick. Yeah, Blacklock, I mean, he was a first-round caliber type talent, defensive tackle, so good, but it's not really going to heal the wounds of everything that's going on with this team. Round 3, Jonathan Greener, pass rusher from Florida. Charlie Heck, offensive tackle from North Carolina in the 4th round. And then they had another 4th round pick and a 5th round pick, and that was it for them. They didn't have a deep draft. They're not going to have a deep draft going forward. Look, Deshaun Watson, his contract, they're going to have to be re-signing this guy here pretty soon. With the moves that the Texans have made,
does he want to re-sign?
Does he want to re-sign? And then 2, are the Texans or is Bill O'Brien almost kind of setting this up to be like he wants to see what Watson can do with less around him type thing? Like,
that's not what you like. There's always this saying, if you don't have a quarterback friendly scheme, then you need to find a new scheme, not a new quarterback and stuff. And that goes for as far as the roster players go. I mean, sure, there's only, I think Watson is the guy. Watson is the guy, and you don't want to be putting him in situations like this.
Yeah. I think he's the quarterback for the future. I think I would like to move forward with him if I were the Texans, but I don't know, man. Honestly, you don't know what's going through Bill O'Brien's head. From what he said, that he's all in on Deshaun. I mean, whenever they do eventually pay him, it's going to be a monster contract. So you could say with some of the moves that they made, maybe they're trying to free up some cap space. But again, bringing on a contract like David Johnson, Brandon Cooks also goes against that. I don't know. It's a weird one. But then again, I mean, the Texans, they do make the playoffs. I mean, like it or not, I mean, they're always competitive. This is a shit division. I mean, it's not a very good division since Andrew Luck left, and everyone else is kind of questionable. But, I mean, it was competitive last year, but the Texans have always had an easy route to the playoffs since getting Deshaun. So, and Bill O'Brien's has been, I mean, I think that's what kind of enamors the Houston organization with him is that, man, he has some boneheaded type decisions. Not only as a GM, but as a head coach in the regular season.
Go watch the Bills game.
I mean, but they still make it. They still make it every year. I mean, so his resume speaks for himself.
I'd feel a lot better if they had gotten the haul that I think they could have for Hobbs. Especially when you saw what the Vikings got for Diggs.
Yeah.
But yeah, reality goes, they just...
Trading away a star player is not unheard of. I think it's fine, but you have to be compensated for it. A player of this caliber. I mean, so
say whatever you want about how you feel about David Johnson and stuff as far as the running back position goes, but that's not what. No. And plus, like after that, what happened? Gurley ended up getting cut and stuff like that, and you could have just signed the. If you really wanted it, if you wanted a top.
A former top running back who had receiving and rushing capabilities, you could have had him for a lot cheaper. It was just hindsight's 20/20, but I mean overall it wasn't good. How do we see this division playing out? Like I said, regardless of what I think and believe, the Texans make the playoffs. I believe they're making the playoffs every year. They make the playoffs. I believe in Deshaun Watson enough to make the playoffs, and I think they have enough talent around them to make it.
I feel like that's due to the division and the conference, because really I feel like the NFC is more competitive than the AFC.
Yeah, for sure. The Texans make the playoffs. The Titans, in my opinion,
win the division. Yeah, that's what I think.
I don't think they're winning the division. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. That's my opinion. I don't think they're gonna be able to replicate what they did last year. I don't believe in the Titans enough.
If they don't, it'll be the Colts then. Yeah, obviously. I mean, obviously that's the last choice, but
I take the Colts over the Titans. I believe if I'm just going quarterback for quarterback, I'll take the one last ride for Phillip Rivers over Ryan Tannehill.
If I'm going to be honest right now, even though I'm a big Rivers fan, I kind of have a little bit more confidence in Tannehill than Rivers.
I mean, I get.
And I don't think you can blame anybody for.
Statistics aren't in my favor. It's more just like.
I feel like that's the main thing because I am very worried about what led
to the decline of Rivers last year and everything. I mean, it could be his.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't have the same arm. I don't know. I mean.
Yeah, that's what I kind of felt when I was watching him.
And then of course the Jags. I don't see them making the playoffs, but like I said before, it's an audition for Gardner Minshew. I don't know. I mean, this has always been a weak addition. If Andrew Luck was still in this division, this would be awesome.
Hand it to him.
And the Colts would take the division. I still don't. I mean, no one will ever understand why he went away. But I mean, if that's what his decision was, then I'm glad that he's at peace with it. But he was an electrifying quarterback when healthy, and I wish we could have seen him play more. But anyway, I think that about wraps up this division. We appreciate you watching. Next, we will be heading to the NFC South. I mean, there's a lot of storylines in that division. Of course, Tom Brady to the Bucs. Drew Brees and the Saints are always competitive. Is it that one last year for the Saints to make it to the Super Bowl? Of rebuilding with the Panthers, and of course the Falcons. They're
retaining their head coach when I thought they was going to get fired throughout the year, but
interesting with the Falcons. But we appreciate you watching. If you have a comment about this video, leave it down below. Please subscribe to the channel if you like NFL content, Dallas Cowboys content. This is a channel for you. We appreciate you watching, and we will see you next time.
Yo, I ain't here for the money, I ain't here for the fame. Though it might be nice to own a jet plane, I'ma do it all for you. Come along and see it's true.